Hello, I'm attorney Todd Leneve. Welcome to West Virginia Gun Law. We are a couple of days post 2024 election, and the future of American politics definitely has changed for the next 4 years, and thought it might be worth taking a few minutes to talk about that today, talk about what it may mean to us as members of the Second Amendment community, and some of the things that we might be able to expect to see coming down the pike starting in January of 2025 when President Trump takes office. Stick around. So Donald Trump was just elected to his second term of office as President of the United States, and I think it's safe to say he's one of the most polarizing figures to enter into the political scene in my lifetime, and probably for most of you as well. Either people really love him or they really hate him. There is a smattering that falls somewhere on the spectrum in between those two extremes, but I think that he is the right man for the job at a time that we need significant change from the current administration and what we've seen our country drug through for the last nearly 4 years. My focus here was that I wanted to talk about what I think the election means for the Second Amendment and how things could play out for us in the next 4 years of his administration, and depending on how well it goes, perhaps another 8 years with Vice President Vance perhaps stepping up and running for president. So I'll begin by saying I understand that Donald Trump was never the greatest friend of the Second Amendment. Certainly there were things that he did that were highly questionable, including his executive order banning bump stocks that seemed to be a knee-jerk reaction in response to the mass shooting out in Las Vegas at the Country Music Festival. That executive action has been undone by the federal courts in our country, but the simple fact remains that he took that step at a time that I think it was maybe his sense of how we put the public's minds at ease, but I think it was the wrong path to take, the wrong action for what that situation called for. So I'm not under any illusion that he's a great friend of the Second Amendment, but I think he's a heck of a lot more friendly to it than the administration we have in place right now, and I think he will have control much more effectively over his Department of Justice and the ATF than what the current president has. I don't think he has control over much, including how to get himself off of a stage. But that being said, one of the first things that tends to happen when a new president comes in is the heads of administrative agencies all get replaced. Everybody who's there now likely, or a majority of the people who are in charge of agencies such as ATF, the DOJ, the FBI, DEA, the FDA, on and on and on, are all going to likely be replaced. And they should be replaced with people who share a similar ideology to what's in the White House. They're all under the executive branch, and therefore they should be people who are in at least alignment, if not lockstep, with what the president wants and what his policies and philosophies are. So what that means is Steve Dettelbach, see ya. He is probably gone. Steve Dettelbach is gone. And that's one of the greatest things to happen to us as members of the Second Amendment community. Merrick Garland, bye-bye. He is also going to be gone. He has been an absolute tool for the left to come after individual freedoms and rights that are guaranteed to us under the Constitution, and he has absolutely supported every unconstitutional effort that the ATF has made to curb the Second Amendment and try to scale back what our rights are. Instead of recognizing that it shall not be infringed, they are all over the place infringing us and have been for the last almost 4 years. So with a new ATF director, I think one of the things that we could potentially expect to see is perhaps a scaling back of or a complete striking of some of these recent executive rules that are final rules through these agencies that have become the subject of litigation all across the country. Pistol braces, the 80% frames and receivers rule, the private sales rule, all these kinds of things that the ATF has just lately been jumping on and trying to cut our rights out. I think we could see a new ATF director and a new attorney general team up to say, hey, we're going to terminate those rules, and they have the right to do that. And so if they terminate those rules, that means all these things right now that are in litigation likely would become moot, and the government, in fact, may even file motions with the various courts to withdraw that litigation and say, hey, we don't intend to pursue this anymore. And we may see an end to things like the private sales rule and the 80% rule and all these other steps that ATF has taken. Now, I'm not saying it will happen, but it absolutely is a possibility. And frankly, it would make sense for some of these things to take place under a new administration because of the impact those rules have had on the American public. So, a simple example is the private sales rule. That's one of the most recent crossing of the boundaries by our government. Basically says that we can no longer engage in person-to-person sales under almost every circumstance without first obtaining a federal firearms license. And I've spoken here on the channel before about that rule, and I've spoken just probably a couple months ago about a gentleman that I've consulted with some who is going through federal prosecution right now here in West Virginia for having sold a couple of firearms to a guy who approached him online and got him to make a sale. So things like that, seeing Americans victimized, we could see those rules rolled back or completely scrapped altogether. We could see an issuance of opinion letters from the ATF clarifying certain things that are no longer problematic in their eyes under a new administration. Stuff like this could take place early on in the process. It may take a little while. I don't know. Again, I'm speculating on what we might be able to look forward to seeing here. I think that one of the campaign platforms that President Trump ran on is critical, and that was a pledge to look at the size of government. And as a person who honestly feels that our government is excessively large, I like nothing better than the idea of seeing it scaled back and seeing some of these bureaucracies slashed. Whether or not we'll see bureaucracies actually eliminated, much as I'd like to see the ATF gone, I don't see that happening. I think that those would be extreme in the eyes of the people who will be in charge for a while, and I don't know that that happens, but I can see budgets being reduced, personnel being reduced, and having them be forced to focus on the things that really should take place under their watch. Elon Musk, of course, jumped on this bandwagon with President Trump several months ago and has been vocal in saying that if he was brought on as an advisor, he would evaluate and go in and effectively cut many of these agencies. And when you look at what he did at Twitter when he bought that, X, I guess I'm showing my age by calling it Twitter, but the things that he did there to make changes, to slash personnel, wouldn't shock me that if he was given the green light to do that for the government, that he might have a really beneficial impact on the regulatory state that exists in this country. You look at our Supreme Court and the rulings that it's made in the West Virginia versus EPA and the Loper-Bright cases. Those are really big cases where our United States Supreme Court has said we're not going to let these regulatory agencies just run out of control and do whatever it is they want. There is a definite limit on their power. And so I think the time is ripe for this kind of action to take place and for us to see these agencies perhaps get cut back and see their power scaled back to levels that might make life a heck of a lot easier for the rest of us. With the GOP gaining control of Congress, both the Senate and the House, I think there's a possibility that we could see some action where the United States Code is amended through new legislation that clarifies things like what a firearm is, going directly to the heart of the 80% rule. Maybe we can get it clarified that those things are not firearms. We can make it very clear that the definition of a firearm includes a completed product, not something that is really nothing more than a hunk of metal. We could see legislation that goes after the definition of a machine gun and makes it clear that a trigger doesn't create a machine gun, that some add-on device doesn't create a machine gun, that a machine gun is a purpose-designed firearm, and that only those types of firearms are considered machine guns. You can't expand the definition just randomly at the whim of a bureaucrat who's not answerable to the American public through re-election. So there are things like this that could take place. Again, as I've said a couple of times, I'm speculating, but it's exciting to see that the Republicans have control of the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives for the first time in a while. Now, I know we all can say that we've been disappointed by the GOP many times when they had the ability to stop things through having a majority in the House of Representatives, and they failed to do so. The simple fact, folks, is that these people are our elected representatives. They're not our leaders. Not a single one of these people is our leader. We elected them as representatives of our interest, of our desires. And in this election, a majority of the American voters decisively said, we want Donald J. Trump back in the White House. We want these people in the Senate, these people in the House of Representatives. They're there to work for us. And so in our capacity as the citizenry of this country, we need to reach out proactively to our legislators, and we need to talk to them, and we need to let them know the things that we expect out of them in this next period of time when they have complete control of both the executive and the legislative branches of government. It's a great opportunity for us to maybe make some gains, and we have to do our part in this representative government process to make sure that our elected representatives are carrying out the mandate that they were given by the voting public in this election. Listen, I appreciate you spending time with me as I sit here and kind of ramble with just some random thoughts that have been going through my head since Tuesday. I'd be real interested to hear what you guys think about the topics and what you think about the election itself. Please drop a comment in the section below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I'd love to have you do so if you're interested. If you do, hit that bell icon so you get notified when new videos come out. Hit the like, share. I would really appreciate you helping me to spread the word. And until the next time we get together, I hope you stay safe. Take care.